Pregame.com.
Texans at Colts. Clear motivation for the Texans. Uncertain motivation for the Colts, though I tend to disagree. This is Bryan Leonard's best bet, the only video best bet of the week from him. Who do you like and why?
I'm going to take the Colts plus the 7 here. I can't believe this line. The look ahead was Indy -3. Now we're looking at a full 9.5, 10-point differential here based on the need for Houston to win this game. And as we pointed out in earlier videos, it's not as important for these teams to win for placement for the games.
Though in this one, though,
well,
if you lose, you go to 3 most likely because the Pats are double-digit favorites. Denver's a 17-point or so favorite. So assuming those two teams win, Houston would be playing next week and then going on the road for 2 games likely. Huge game. I think of positional motivation, this is as high as you get.
Definitely for positional motivation. But do you really think the Houston players don't think they can win on the road in the NFL? I mean,
in Denver, and imagine going in Denver and in New England.
Well, they're
huge underdogs.
They're going to be underdogs,
win both,
no doubt. But if you're a player on that team, you think you could beat these teams. So the game is important for them, obviously. But you know, look at Indy. Nobody thinks Indy has anything to play for in this game. They got the coach back. Pagano's back this week. He's going to be on the sideline. He's coaching. All season long, Indy has pointed to him coming back. They've used him as an inspiration. Now they're playing a team that they lost to just 2 weeks ago, a divisional rival, and they don't think they'll be motivated to play.
And they're at home.
And they're at home.
To me, it feels like a culmination of a great regular season and a chance to go crazy when Coach Pagano comes out. I mean, to me, I think their motivation is going to be, if anything, you could make the case that they're going to be motivated and loose, the Colts, and Houston's going to be motivated, but maybe because the stakes are so high, a little bit tight.
I agree. And if you remember the game just a few weeks ago, you know, Houston covered that game. They get a late field goal in that game to cover, but they didn't dominate that game. I mean, and we've already seen all season long the difference between Luck playing at home and playing on the road. That game was on the road. They were pretty competitive against Houston. Now they're playing at home. Indy's 6-1 against the spread at home this year. I think they've got a lot of motivation here that hasn't caught up into the line, and I think there's some value here on Indy.
Okay, so I agree with you that the motivation is mispriced in the line. But now that's the thing about that makes handicapping almost like 3-dimensional chess. There's other factors to consider, which is just the general over or underratedness of the team. I think the Colts might be the most overrated team in the NFL right now. Is if you look at it on the season, they've actually been outscored, I have the stat here, by 42 points combined as a 10-5 team. You look at Andrew Luck, he's favored to be Rookie of the Year. In quarterback rating, he's 29th in the NFL. Now, he is better at home. I agree with you there. And there is something with the intangibles. You know, I was on ESPN Las Vegas here with Steve Cofield and Dave Koch and talking about at what point does these come from behind wins become intangibles that are positive that you got to account for? And at what point is it randomness? Now, let's look at the Detroit Lions. This is a team that statistically is much better than their record or the scoreboard. And people say, well, they find a way to lose. So it's being accounted for. If you just looked at the stats, you'd bet the Lions every week, right? You're not doing that. So Lions have crossed that point of being their lack of intangibles is a problem. Is Indy past the point where the positive intangibles are enough that it's more than random?
Well, Detroit, as an example, is an undisciplined team. I mean, they have great gains, then all of a sudden somebody's got a stupid penalty. And you've seen that all season long. They're just not a very organized team. I think it may cost the coach's job. But Indy's a team who seems to do what they have to do to win. They haven't been pretty doing it. They don't have many blowouts. They win the close games. A lot of that is randomness. Are they a 10-5 team? I don't believe they're a 10-5 team. In fact, I think both of these teams are going to get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. I'm not impressed with either one. Houston's a team, you go back and you see what they have done against good teams this year. Not very good. You go back to, was it week 2, week 3 when they played Denver, took a big lead. Denver just coming back with, Peyton Manning, been out of the league for a year.
And Denver's a team that's certainly gotten better.
Gotten much better as the season went on. And in fact, at halftime of that game, you saw it turned on for Denver. Denver since then has gotten better and better every week. Houston's regressed every week. And, go back to that game, I think it was Sunday Night Football when Houston was at Chicago and it was just terrible weather and they ground out a victory. that victory over the Bears doesn't look so good anymore. So Houston's been very disappointing when they play good teams. And
injuries too.
Injuries
on defense
too.
especially.
Yeah, definitely.
Not the same team.
Yeah.
You know, Marco was on First Preview with Scott Spreitzer last night, and I was listening, talking about the idea of this Houston just being a different team right now.
Definitely a different team. And you go back and take a look at the last few weeks. There's been many times where the spot, I always like to look at the spot. Houston off of a bad performance. What do they do the next week? Well, the spot is great for them. And they come out and they lay an egg. And people, you know, when they played the Jets on Monday Night Football earlier this season, Joe Public was all over Houston. Just about every wise guy I know was on the Jets. Jets covered. Who knows what the right side was. But Houston took a lead in that game and took the air out of the ball, and they screwed around and had a chance to actually lose that game late. And then at the time we were thinking, well, maybe it was just the way they played it. You know, they were just trying to get out of there without injuries. But the more I think about it, all season long, it's been a situation like that where they cannot distance themselves from the opposition. I just don't think Houston's that good at this point.
So I think this is almost a master class in the complexity of handicapping. So let me break it down. What I'm hearing is, let's say there's 100 factors in a game that really could matter. Probably 90+% of those, 90+ of those, is built into the line. Tom Brady's a good quarterback. That's a factor. Well, that's built into the line, et cetera, et cetera. Now you get a handful of factors that you think the market is mispricing. Now, it's wonderful if all of those factors line up on the same side, then you have a humongous, one of your biggest plays of the year. But oftentimes, a majority of those factors will be one way. Some of them, though, a minority will be the other. Right. You add up, and every factor is not created equal either, and say, am I getting 2.5 points of value because of these 7 factors, 5 on one side, 2 on the other? Does it add up where I have 2.5 points or 2 points of value? In this case, I'm hearing you say, yeah, the Colts might be overrated, but the mispricing and the motivation is so much bigger that there's value on the Colts.
Well, if you take a look at the Colts all season long, from a gambling standpoint, I think they, even though their numbers say they're overrated, the lines have not been outrageous on the Colts games. I mean, you go back and look at some of their games, they're a 3-point favorite over like Jacksonville. They just have not been
Well, the Colts have emerged, though. I think there was a sense early that, they've gotten lucky a few times, but they've continued that, I think.
But in the gambling standpoint, do you know of any guys that bet for a living that are a believer in the Colts?
I know before the season, Fezzik was big on the over, like 5.5.
Or 5 wins.
Yeah. So, but no, I think everyone sees, and again, to some degree, you look at that point. Yeah, if you're up by 30 and you score that extra touchdown to go up 37, that goes in the points just like a late touchdown. So all points aren't created equal, but after 15 games, there's a message. They're winning the close games, which a lot of people might say that's the kind of team I want to bet, but we understand for the most part that is random.
Could be a random outcome.
All right, we've talked it through. Let's make it official.
All right, nobody wants the Colts in this game. Lions at 7 right now. I'll take the Colts. I think they got plenty of motivation in this game, and this is a young team who has a great history. I believe they won 10 straight games at home against Houston. Granted, had a different quarterback at that time, but still, this is a team and an organization that knows they can beat this team in this game at this venue. I think the whole situation about Houston having to win because everybody thinks they have to have home field all the way through, I think it's just too many points in this. And Indy catching 7 at home, I'm all over them.
I always call it the pink basketball analogy. You go to Walmart, if there's a pink basketball, it's on sale probably. You shoot with a pink basketball out in your backyard, don't you?
But you haven't seen the way I shoot, so you can't say I'm shooting as if I have.
I'm figuring you had a hook shot back in the day.
I did have a hook shot.
How did I know that?
Abdul-Jabbar when I was growing up.
All right, guys, great video. Next up, we're keeping going here. We're moving, actually, one more NFL game. We're talking Jets and Bills. Remember, you can get all of our videos at pregame.tv. Talk to you then.